Okay, this is number 7 from 1, 2, and I thought this was kind of an interesting example, maybe where we could work a little bit more with basic variables and free variables. This is the augmented matrix of a system of 4 equations, and it looks like we have 5 variables. Okay, so first of all, we want to put this thing in reduced echelon form. So notice that it looks like all the leading entries are 1s. That looks good. The only row that contains only 0s is at the very bottom. That's good. But we also want to make sure that for every leading entry that is a 1, all of the other entries in that column are 0. And that's true for the first 2. But notice in this particular column, that's not true. So it's not quite in reduced echelon form yet. We've got to turn that into a 0. Okay, so it looks like we want to recopy the last 3 rows and then maybe multiply row 3 by 8 and add it to the first row to change that into a 0. That'll put it in reduced echelon form. So let's do that. I'll leave the last 3 rows the same. Okay, now remember, we're going to multiply row 3 by 8 and add it to that. So that'll automatically make that a 0. But it won't change any of the first 4 elements of that first row. But let's be careful. It won't change the 2 either, it looks like, because 8 times 0 plus 2 is still going to be 2. All right. Now this thing is in reduced echelon form. So the big question is, what are the basic variables and what are the free variables? So let's try to write that down. Well, remember what I said on problem number 5. The basic variables always correspond to the pivot columns. So which columns were we able to change into the right form? It looks like 1, 2, and 5. So that means that the basic variables are x1, x2, and x5. That means the other variables are free, which would be x3 and x4. All right. Now this one is a little bit different than number 5. It's a little bit more complicated because in this case, we can put the basic variables in terms of the free variables, and that's really what you want to do when you express your general solution set. So here's what you do. You can go ahead and rewrite the original system in terms of the matrix in terms of the original system if you want to. So notice the very first equation is x1 minus 5x3 equals 2. Okay. Now what you usually do is solve for the basic variables and put them in terms of the free variables. So that is your first equation. All right. And just keep in mind x3 is a free variable, so it can be any number. Now take a look at the second equation. It looks like it's this. But again, you want to solve for the you want to solve for the basic variable, which is 2. So that is kind of your second equation. All right. And it looks to me like the third row here essentially just says that x5 is equal to 0. Okay. And we already know that x3 and x4 are free, so they are arbitrary. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's your solution set. You can choose any 2 numbers for x3 and x4 and plug them into those equations to get the values of the basic variables x1, x2, and x5.